Go get CJ Gardner-Johnson. We talk about it coming up in the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. The Texans released CJ Gardner-Johnson, and I just want to know why he's not in a Browns uniform yet. Why the Browns defense faces its biggest challenge of the season with Detroit this week, and Quinshon Judkins is a sign of hope that Cleveland's offense needs right now, but he's going to need some help as well. I do want to thank you for being in every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 to use across the app. Go to FanDuel.com today. CJ Gardner-Johnson apparently didn't like his role with the Texans, and so it all transpires after the Texans traded a second-round pick for CJ Gardner-Johnson. It all transpires and unfolds with him being released by the Texans this week, and I just want to know why he's not a Cleveland Brown yet, because here's the thing. Like, I understand that it didn't work in Houston, and there was obvious reasons for that. I've gone back and watched some of the breakdowns as to like why things weren't right. It sounds like he had trouble picking up D'Amico Ryan's defense. There was at least 3 plays for these first 3 weeks, one in each game, where he was in coverage or supposed to be in coverage and didn't do the right thing, and it ends up being either a touchdown or leading to a touchdown. There was one just this past week where he was supposed to take the inside receiver out of like a sort of an inline play where the receivers are closer to the line of scrimmage, and he takes the outside guy and screws up the other safety, who then has to try to chase the inside guy, and who cuts across the field, and then it sets up an easy score for the Jags up near the goal line. And you can see the other safety just like look back with like shrugging, like looking over at CJ Gardner-Johnson, like what went wrong here? What happened? And that there was a miscommunication issue. So listen, I understand the Browns can't afford those types of mistakes. The Browns cannot afford to bring in players that are going to be liabilities, but they also are in a situation where they're kind of desperate right now for secondary additions, secondary help, secondary depth. It is easily their biggest, most fatal flaw in this defense that is the best in the NFL, arguably right now, and especially given what they just did to the Green Bay Packers this past weekend. I mean, they're brilliant, but their secondary woes are obvious. And so as much as I understand, like things didn't work in Houston, and there was maybe not a good communication there, and there were some struggles, I think he'd be a useful addition here in Cleveland, even if, and here's the thing, it doesn't have to be some long-term deal or anything like that. It can simply be let's bring him in, see how he does this year. If we don't like it, we don't have to sign him again in the offseason. Like, he can just go be a free agent and go do what he wants to do and sign wherever he wants to go. But right now, the Browns could use his help. And like, I also think too, with the complications of him not understanding the defense when it comes to D'Amico Ryan's D'Amico Ryan's system. Jim Schwartz system is known for being very player friendly and being very easy to grasp and understand. And guys are just kind of able to read and react and make plays. And that's what CJ Gardner-Johnson does best. He is a ball hawking safety that can fly around and make plays and doesn't want to have to think about things. So in this system, I think he'd be really good. I think he'd be really useful. I understand right now people are probably saying like, well, hey, the Browns have 2 starting safeties. They have Ronnie Hickman, who's I think he's played well this season so far, other than obviously his missed block on the blocked punt against the Ravens. Grant Delpit has been really solid this year. He's flying around, maybe best he has in his career to this point, and making plays. And he just made the interception that helps the Browns win that game this past weekend against Green Bay. So those guys have been good. I'm not denying that. But here's the thing. There's a lot of versatility that you can have in this defense. And there's been times where I remember seeing it in training camp. They put Ronnie Hickman down in the slot. What's the big weakness of this defense right now? The slot position. They don't really have somebody they can rely on. Cameron Mitchell has been so bad that he didn't start this past week. He was an inactive on the roster, despite being on the 53-man roster. And they started Myles Garrett instead. So there's room to move guys around and put guys in different situations. And Gardner-Johnson, I'm never going to complain about adding more talent to a roster. And CJ Gardner-Johnson is a talented player. It didn't work in one place. Sometimes situation matters. And I would hope he could come in here and do some and show what he can do, and that he'd have more of an opportunity or better opportunity here in Cleveland if he was to be signed. So it's no secret they need help. Gardner-Johnson's also only 27. Like, that's still pretty young in the grand scheme of things. Like, he should just be entering like the prime of his career. So to me, there's still a lot of meat on that bone. And the Browns do have a history of taking chances on guys as well, even guys who maybe were problematic at a previous stop. I mean, think about the names of guys they've signed with complications or problems or things that people deem unsavory, even as recently as like Isaiah Bond earlier this offseason, bringing him in and giving him a fully guaranteed contract as a rookie. The Quinshon Judkins situation. Obviously Deshaun Watson's going to stand out. Like, those are more extreme situations. Nothing that CJ Gardner-Johnson has done, compares to any of this off the field stuff that any of those guys were caught up in. But the larger point here is just like the Browns are not shy or afraid to bring in players that have maybe not worked somewhere else, or maybe had some issues somewhere else, or maybe had off the field issues, and give them a chance. And so I think the fit there sort of makes sense. There's also the Eagles connection, because two of his best seasons of his career came with the Philadelphia Eagles in winning the Super Bowls that they won last year. And I believe he was on the team back in 2019 when they won as well. So like, there is a lot to like about the player that he is and what he brings to the table. I think for a Browns team that obviously at this point, and I take it back, he wasn't on the team in 2019. That goes back too far for him. So he was with the Saints at that time. My bad. I apologize. I forgot that he wasn't with the team then. But they won the Super Bowl with him last year. They got to the Super Bowl with him the year prior. And yeah, like he's obviously been or I guess 2 years prior, but he's obviously been a solid player. And somebody that I think the Browns would be, it would be worth kicking the tires on. He ranked 36 among safeties in run defense this year. He was top 10 in coverage for safeties, according to PFF last year. And I do think there is something to be said, too, for his coverage ability being something that the Browns could also use. Because Grant Delpit's been good this year, and Grant Delpit's better as a guy that flies up and makes plays in the run game. But to have a safety back there that you can count on in coverage, and maybe that means you can play him out of the slot every now and then, too, I think is valuable. I would take a shot. I would give it a shot. What does this Browns team have to lose at this point? It would only make a defense that's already elite potentially even better by adding more talent to it. And I don't think that's the end of the world, all things considered. There's no waiver claim here. It's not like you're picking up his contract because he was released. So he's getting paid whatever he was owed from the Texans, and he can be on his merry way, signing a vet minimum if he wants to with some team, which would probably be the case. And maybe that could be here in Cleveland. But I think the fit makes sense. I think it's a guy that they should kick the tires on, because why not at this point to bolster the weakness of this Browns defense right now, which is, of course, that secondary. We start looking ahead to Detroit, and I'll tell you, as good as this defense is, this weekend is going to be their biggest test of the season. I'll explain. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. As of August of this year, they make cars that keep you and your family safe. From footwork to breathe work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model vehicle that they produce. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. Plus, all-wheel drive is standard in every crossover SUV, so you can drive with confidence through almost any season, which is great if you live here in Cleveland, because this time of year, you can kind of get all four seasons in a single day. Like our players, we sweat every detail because When you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, so the Browns have played some really good teams so far this season. Joe Burrow and the Bengals, we know that what that offense can do. The Ravens are supposed to be elite this year. They don't look elite because that defense is a big mystery right now and question mark. And they're on the brink as they go to Kansas City this weekend of being 1-3 and being in the bottom of the bottom of the division, or maybe even below the division, maybe even below the Browns in the division. They can pull off an upset over the same Lions team that just beat Baltimore, this weekend. And then obviously you have the Packers this week who are a legitimate Super Bowl threat. Their defense is also very good. And the offense doesn't necessarily have like that star, but they have a lot of different talented players, and the Browns shut them down. But this Detroit team is just a completely different beast with all the different ways that they can attack you. And I was watching that game on Monday night against Baltimore. For them to pull away the way they did and just completely like manhandle the Ravens was shocking. You don't see the Ravens lose a lot of games that way, but Detroit is as balanced as it comes in terms of run pass ratio. They pass the ball 52.38% of the time. They run it 47.62% of the time. So you're almost at like 50-50 there. And that 47.62 is 8th in the NFL in terms of running the football. So they're just super balanced, as we saw on Monday. And the same way they wound up blowing out the same Ravens that blew out Cleveland in week 2, like they were able to dismantle that defense. And it's just because they can attack you so many different ways. They have the passing weapons. They have the running weapons. It's almost like death by 1,000 cuts because you have to be on your P's and Q's at every area of the defense to be able to stop them. I mean, they have so much talent on this roster from Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams is becoming even more involved in their offense in general and how they sort of do things. And so, yeah, like it's a scary, scary proposition to stop this offense. I can tell you this, if the Browns get behind early, like by 2 scores, it's probably game over. I know that they just came back from a 2-score deficit against the Packers, but that's the Packers. This Lions offense is a juggernaut. And as I've said numerous times, the Browns just aren't built to dig themselves out of big deficits or mount big comebacks. Like they're not this offensive crazed team that can just like sling the ball all over the place and make a bunch of things happen. They depend on their defense to get stops and limit the scoring and to keep things close. And then they maybe can be in striking distance and make some things happen. That's exactly what played out against the Packers this past weekend. If that's going to be the strategy, which is pretty much kind of the strategy every week for this Browns team, it just ain't going to work. And so this Browns defense and the defensive line in particular, as great as it is going to have to really ruin the game plan. And it's going to have to be across all 3 levels. They're going to have to be buttoned up because this isn't the Packers wide receiver room. Like they have a lot more talent on this Lions team than the Packers do. And I do think the key here continues to be, and this will be a theme all season, obviously, just that defensive line for Cleveland. If they can make life difficult for Jared Goff, get him off his spots, get him shaky, we know he can be susceptible to turnovers. What was it? I think a 5 interception game he had last year for the Lions. So there's definitely mistakes in there. There's Goff is not a perfect quarterback by any stretch. I think at this point in his career, you have to call him top 10, but do I think he's like the elite of the elite with the Lamars and the Burrows and the Mahomes of the world? No, I don't. But he's great, and he's in a perfect system for what he does, and I do think he's gotten better as time has gone on. He deserves a lot of credit for that. But I do think he's susceptible to mistakes, like all quarterbacks are if you get pressure on him. And I have some numbers here that sort of tell that story as well. So for the season, Jared Goff is a 77.9 completion percentage. It's second best in the NFL among quarterbacks who have thrown at least 50 passes. His 120.2 passer rating is also second. He's thrown for 761 yards, 7 touchdowns, and just 1 interception. So largely clean, largely efficient, been really, really good for this Lions team. And I think that bared itself out as if you watched that game on Monday, you saw that. He's been really, really good. But that Ravens defense was not generating a lot of pressure on him. that's been the big concern now for the last couple of days from Ravens fans is like, where's the pass rush? They just don't have one. And so when Goff is pressured so far this season, his completion percentage drops from that 77.9 to just 63%. He's got 239 yards, 8.6 yards per attempt, a 90.4 passer rating, so much different than 120.2. And he has no touchdowns, no interceptions yet either. But those things will come if you are able to generate more and more pressure on him, obviously. The Browns are 16th so far this season in total pressures, but we know the types of problems their defensive line causes, and we saw it firsthand this past weekend against Jordan Love. He was running for his life. Myles Garrett with his ridiculous first step to get past the Packers tackle, and you heard the tackle yell at Jordan Love, "Run, Jordan, run," because he knew that he'd gotten beat just cleanly and there was nothing he could do about it. And, I mean, he's brilliant. Obviously, we know what Myles is at this point, but it's everybody else too. Malik Collins is getting pressure constantly. I saw Mason Graham had a pass rush win rate against Green Bay of like 43, and the average was like 9% or something like that, according to, I think it was PFF. So there's all kinds of numbers and things that tell us how great this defensive line is, but we also have just our eyes and the tape that tells us that as well. They are a penetrating, attacking group that can make life hard for any quarterback, any given week, any given Sunday or Monday or Thursday, if they were to ever play on any of those this year. They're ridiculous. And so understanding that, I think this Browns team has to get to Goff and rattle him and force some of those mistakes that we know he can be prone to making. And they have to make him one-dimensional. Like the goal here should be, which they've done brilliantly, by the way, these first couple weeks, take away the run game. Make sure Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery aren't just like breaking free for these massive runs and crushing you on that side of the ball. And I think because you got guys like Carson Schlesinger and because this defensive line has been pretty good in run stops as well, you're not as worried about that. And if you can limit the damage there, make Goff have to beat you, that's what you want. Make Goff throw it more times. Make Goff have to make the big plays. And then maybe you get a situation where Myles Garrett's bearing down on him and he throws one up and it becomes a pick. And those interceptions those turnovers that they talked about coming in bunches actually start coming in bunches for this Browns defense. That to me is the game plan. That to me is how you beat this team. But man, it's not going to be easy because this Lions offense is just a different beast. I know that they've seen the Ravens offense and they did a pretty good job of shutting it down for most of that game. But I think the Lions offense is better than the Ravens offense. And I think you saw that, frankly, on Monday night with how many points they were able to put up, how they kind of just like they outran the Ravens in terms of scoring. Like they just kept adding and adding. And the Ravens, as they kind of got stopped a few times, they couldn't keep up. They were just scoring at will. And so I think their offensive line, I think, is better than the Ravens too. So this Lions offense is no joke. And to me, as good as this defense has been, as good as it's going to be throughout the rest of the season, this is the biggest test they face so far this season. And it might end up being the biggest test they face for the entirety of the season. And I know I'm saying that knowing the Bills are on this schedule and the Ravens are on the schedule again, and the Bengals are on the schedule again when maybe Joe Burrow is going to be able to play at that point again in the season. Who knows if he's even back or if they even bring him back depending on the direction of the season. So I understand that, but this Lions offense, I think, is the best offense they'll probably play all year. They are elite, and it's a scary, scary thought that they're coming, that the Browns got to play at their place on Sunday and try to slow them down in their building. It's not going to be easy, but if there's a defense that's up for it, I think it could be this one, but man, it's going to be a challenge for them. Speaking of the Lions offense, if the Browns offense have any chance in this game, they got to get their offense in gear. And I do think Quinshon Judkins provided signs of hope. He's going to need some help, though. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. The NFL season is obviously here. We're 3 weeks in, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There's nothing better than following the NFL season with FanDuel, and frankly, the best part is they have options for however you like to bet or whatever type of bettor you are. Maybe you're a prop bet person, and you want to bet on a player eclipsing a certain benchmark in a game, or maybe you want to combine that benchmark with a few other props and even maybe a money line to build a same game parlay, or you can just jump on a money line in real time as the action unfolds during the games on Sunday. The options are endless, and honestly, it makes every game, whether your team is playing or not, even more exciting. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, so Quinshon Judkins has been nothing short of awesome in his first 2 games with the Browns. And that's also remembering that in his first game with the Browns, he was limited to just 20 snaps and ran the ball 10 times. And he still got 61 yards rushing in that game against Baltimore. But there were some interesting stats. These are via True Media, by the way, that I found that I think tell kind of an interesting story about this Browns run game and how good Quinshon Judkins has been and why he is kind of the light at the end of the tunnel that the Browns are hoping for with this offense to get it in gear, find a different level, be able to maybe get something going and put some points on the board and then off of the run game, do some other things in the pass game as well. We'll get to those things here in a second, but these stats I want to give you. So the Browns are 29th right now in the NFL as a team in terms of yards before contact per rush, 0.57. They are 6th in yards after contact per rush at 3.43. That basically tells us that their running backs are having to create a lot for themselves. Like they're not getting a lot of yards per rush before contact, but they are getting a lot after contact, which means their running backs are making plays, making guys miss in space, and then getting upfield and getting something, even if it's turning something into nothing into something. And so to take it a step further, as this relates specifically to Quinshon, he has essentially played in just 1.5 games at this point, and he's leading the league per True Media in yards after contact per rush at a clip of 5.14. So he is averaging 5.14 extra yards after contact. And basically, again, that tells us like, yeah, he doesn't necessarily have a lot of room to run at times, but even when he is getting contacted, he then extends the play, makes it bigger, is able to make it, snag a bigger gain out of it or whatever, and make plays on his own merit. David Montgomery, by the way, of the Lions, is second on that list at 4.35. But I mean, Quinshon's almost like a full yard in front of even the guy who's in second, and David Montgomery, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, like Quinshon's been spectacular already, and it's extremely exciting in terms of his potential for this offense and the places it can go with Quinshon leading the charge. He's doing what I thought and what I said he'd be able to do as just being the more talented player on this team in general or in this running back room. He's an eraser. Guys maybe miss a block or it's not a perfect hole. Well, guess what? He's finding the hole. He's attacking it. He's making a quick cut and he's getting upfield. He's not thinking. He's reading things better than the other guys in this backfield on the depth chart can do or can. He's got phenomenal vision. He's really quick. He attacks the hole. He's physical. He's aggressive. Like those are all things that make him a great back. And you're seeing the results pay off. And like, yeah, sometimes the line or sometimes the situation in front of him isn't perfect, but he's going to take it and run with it and make something out of it. And that's great. That is like Nick Chubb type stuff where, again, I think we glorify this offensive line. And I do think the offensive line was obviously better several years ago when they were in their prime. I'm not denying that. But I'm sure if you go back and watch some tape from the Nick Chubb prime days, you'd see some times where they maybe made mistakes or there wasn't a perfect, situation for Chubb to run through, and he can just make plays because he can make guys miss. And he was so light on his feet and good that sometimes it didn't matter that there wasn't like a massive hole. He can still make something happen. I think Quinshon's of the same ilk where he's an eraser. He can erase mistakes and turn plays into bigger chunks and be that spark that he needs to be. So what I'm trying to say in all this is there is signs of hope for this offense in the form of Quinshon Judkins and his ability to make this run game not only respectable, but potentially elite. But to get there, he does need some help from the O-line. If they can make his life even easier, if they can open up some holes for him and make sure he's not getting contacted closer to the line of scrimmage and that there's more room for him to do damage. I mean, just imagine if there's bigger holes in different, better situations that he can run through, or better sets that he can run through, what that's going to mean for the end results of these runs. I mean, he's going to break off even bigger ones. He's going to break some for touchdowns. It's going to be a pretty remarkable thing if the offensive line can sort of provide that spark. It would help getting Jack Conklin back, because Jack Conklin is still a good lineman in this league when he's healthy. The problem has just been he can't be counted on to stay healthy. And so that's become a problem at this point. But if this offense is going to turn things around, if this offense is going to have any modicum of success the rest of this season and get on track and be able to compete with some of these other teams that they go against, especially some of these other offenses that they go against, like this weekend in Detroit against the Lions, it's going to be Quinshon who's the catalyst for it. He's already shown that he's capable of it. He broke off a couple longer ones this past weekend, the 14-yarder, the 38-yarder. So we've seen it firsthand. Like, he can be that guy. He can make that type of impact. He can be, I think you're seeing the early stages of him being a top back in this league already, but the offensive line doing their part would only help that cause. So it's kind of, yes, Quinshon being here and being effective already is a bright spot for the direction of this offense in general. But getting some help up front would make him even more of a threat for this team, and really allow the potential of what this offense can do to be realized on an even higher level, which is what they need, because I think the run game in this offense has to set up everything else. If they get that group going, they can finally take some shots downfield, which has not been there quite yet, because teams aren't afraid of the Browns going deep on them. They're keeping everything underneath and in front of them. So if you get this run game working a little bit more, those things open up. But I thought the balance was better this week. You didn't have Flacco throwing the ball 40-plus times. You had, I think it was only 20 rushes, or 20. I think it was either 20 or 19 rushes for the game. And so leaning on that run game to sort of set the table for everything else and having it be effective would mean a lot for this offense. And I think everything else kind of takes care of itself from there. So I'm not saying they're going to be a juggernaut this year. I'm not saying they're ever going to be what the Lions are this year, because the Lions are legitimately, I mean, their offense is borderline unstoppable at times. If Jared Goff is able to be confident and, doesn't make bad decisions. I'm not saying they're going to get to that level, but if they can get this run game going, they can be a bigger threat. And in some of these games that they're keeping close against even good teams, they'll finish them. They'll pull them off, because they'll have a something in their offense that can be dependable for them. It's another episode Down With Your Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcast, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. For your second listen, you can get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. First, it's Tyler, the Madman Rowland, who gives you that shot of espresso you need to start your football day. And then Tony Wiggins rounds it out with the barbershop with some of the smoothest breakdowns to end your day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I always like to remind you as well, you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs. Season's just around the corner. Locked On Guardians. They're now in first place in the AL Central. Find those at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.